Can you give me an update on the number of participants joining?
We have 4 persons watching live.
Okay. We'll wait for 2 more minutes, I guess, then we'll begin. I think we are ready to go. Sadhana.
Yes, we can start. Jayna ma'am. Just request her to join. Okay, ma'am is also here. We can begin now. Your mic is off, Sabhi.
Guys, there is a technical issue at CC's end, so we'll be starting in a moment.
Yes, I think we should start now.
Okay. We are really regretful for the technical glitches. Jayna ma'am, we'll just begin. Shana sir? Okay. A very good evening to everyone. Welcome to the University Debating Rhetoric Club Republic Day celebration. And we are very grateful for the chief guest, Ms. Jayna Kothari, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India, for being the chief guest today. With everyone's permission, I'd like to begin today's event. Okay. The Constitution, which took force on January 26, 1950, following extensive deliberation and changes by a commission led by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, urges us to reaffirm our commitment to unity in diversity, fraternity, and equality amongst all our citizens. It guarantees justice, equality, liberty, and fraternity to its citizens. The fundamental precepts of our Constitution remains a prominent reason for our progress to this day. These teachings were based on the spirit and unity shown by our countrymen, which resulted in abolishment of the colonial rule, and these principles will continue to guide citizens of India, charting a path of success in every domain. As generations proceed, the practical implementation of the values stated by our Constitution holds high regard in the diverse societal unity of our nation. As an asset for this nation's development in various fields, the youth of this generation have a huge responsibility of acknowledging the obligation in withholding the values of the Constitution and fulfilling it with the highest regard of honor. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to move forward and ask Professor F. Sharani, Coordinator CEC, for the welcome address. So you're on mute. You're on mute, I guess. Not audible. So.
Sir is not audible.
Hello.
Yes, sir, it is fine now.
Thank you. On behalf of the President and the members of the University Debating and Rhetoric Club of CEC, a warm welcome and happy Republic Day to all of you. Especially, we are very excited to host a lecture by one of the most adorable lawyers of the Supreme Court, Ms. Jayna Kothari ma'am. She's going to deliver a lecture on a very interesting topic, making and evolutions of the Indian Constitution. Why do we need constitution or rules? All the religious, historical, and mythological stories did not simply list their rules, but it embedded them in a dramatic tales that illustrate why we need them. Without the constitution or rules, we are quick to aim low and worship qualities that are beneath us. Evolutions is the key elements of vibrant society and nation. So its rules and constitution may evolve due to ideological and political influences. It's really fascinating to hear from an expert who is not only an executive director of the Center for Law and Policy Research, but as a practicing lawyer of the highest order. She has first-hand knowledge about the evolutionary momentum of our Constitution. We heartily welcome you, ma'am, on this forum, and thank you very much for sparing your valuable time to deliver this lecture. Thank you very much, and welcome to all of you.
Thank you so much, Sharani, sir. Moving forward, I'd like to request Dr. Sada Fareed ma'am, President UDLC, to announce the results of the speech competition organized by the University Debate and Literary Club for school students.
Thank you, Sabi. Good evening to all of you. So, as it is Republic Day today, a very happy Republic Day to all of you. UDLC had organized a speech competition for school students on the topic, the youth and its role in transforming today's Republic. The results of that competition are as follows. The first position is secured by Basra Hassan, student of class 11th AMU Girls School. And Aman Beg has secured second position, student of class 11th. Sayyid Hamid Senior Secondary School Boys, AMU. And third position goes to Javeria Tasneem, class 10th student, Delhi Public School, Aligarh. Congratulations to all the winners, and congratulations to all other students also who participated in this competition.
Thank you so much, Sadaf ma'am. And as we had earlier promised that the winner of the competition will be presenting this speech here at this forum in front of the chief guest, I request Ms. Basra Hassan Rizvi, please begin.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are, Basra.
Okay. The youth of the nation are the trustees of posterity, as said by Benjamin Disraeli. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Basra Hassan Rizvi of class 11th Humanities from AMU Girls School. First of all, I would like to make use of this prestigious platform to congratulate each one of you present here on the 72nd Republic Day, when the country marks and celebrates the date on which the Constitution was implemented on 26 January 1950. Secondly, I'm immensely grateful to the Honorable Chief Guest, Ms. Jayna Kothari, President of UDLC, Dr. Sadaf Fareed, Coordinator of CEC, Professor F.S. Sherani. And last but not the least, Team UDLC for giving me this opportunity for delivering the speech in today's event on the topic, the youth and its role in today's Republic. So, as the nation grows to become a developed country, the role of youth is as important as bricks in a building. Why? Because the youth is the most important and dynamic segment in the population of any country. India, being the youngest nations of the world, has more than 62% of its population in the working age group between 15 to 59 years. At present time, about 34% of the gross national income, GNI, is contributed by none other than the youth, aging between 50 to 29 years. However, the role of youth regarding this particular day is quite sentimental as it is statistically. In an interview conducted by the IANS in 2017, the youngsters stated how they feel proud calling themselves Indian citizens, hosting its national flag, reciting its national anthem, but at the same time, they're also very concerned about the degradation of the constitution, the principle of constitution, because of some unforeseen factors like corruption and intolerance. That criticism of the government is now seen as an anti-national movement. This concern shows the patriotic feeling the youth has for the country, that they'll never let it slide onto the hands of someone who'd somewhere be responsible for the country's defamation. Now, one important role of youth in today's republic is that they are the voices of the nation. They are the voices of today. They are the voices of tomorrow. If they clearly understand the question regarding the constitution, why, what, and how, then they can clearly tackle any miscellaneous, even gigantic obstacles with reasoning and logic. Not to mention, their tomorrow is the tomorrow of the nation as well. Now, many are intrigued by the Republic Parade. Many are the one doing the parade. The divergence in position couldn't ever nullify the role each one of them play in today's Republic. So, in an interview conducted by the Free Press Journal, the youngsters understand that what it is to be an Indian. It is to be inclusive. It is to show kindness. It is to respect distinct cultures. It is to practice non-violence. It is to respect people from all walks of life. Because a true patriot is seen to be the one who is there for the nation and its people in the hour of need. Youth has the power to change the nation. Their innovative, fresh, and brilliant ideas can be the reason of the progress of the country. So, to conclude up my speech, I'd just like to say that the pivotal role of youth is to maintain the equilibrium of power distribution in democracy while circumscribing it with a developing approach as well, maintaining a transparent society and contributing to India's republic. As said by Nelson Mandela, youth of today are the leaders of tomorrow. Water them with opportunities, they'll give you fruitful benefits. Thank you so much for listening me peacefully. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead. Happy Republic Day once again, and thank you so much. Jazakallah.
Thank you so much, Basha. That was a brilliant speech by you. Moving forward now to the main event from the address by our Chief Guest, Jayna Kothari, ma'am. I don't think our Chief Guest needs any introduction, but for the sake of convenience, Ms. Jayna Kothari is a senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India and executive director of the Center for Law and Policy Research. A long list of legal triumphs include arguing the constitutional challenge to right of children to free and compulsory primary education act of 2009, the constitutional challenge to section 377, and the decriminalization of adultery, amongst many. Ms. Jayna Kothari, ma'am, you have the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to the AMU University Debate and Literary Club for inviting me to give this talk today for Republic Day. Wish you all a very happy Republic Day and great congratulations for the competition, and warm regards to students and faculty members from AMU as well. Before I begin my talk today, I would like to, just as a start, introduce you all to one of the initiatives actually we've started at the Center for Law and Policy Research, which is the National Constitution Society. This is an initiative that we've started at many universities and high schools to set up student clubs that would engage with the Constitution. And perhaps it's like your university and literary club already, where you're doing events on the theme around the Constitution, such as this for Republic Day. So I would really encourage your club to engage more and do more events, perhaps maybe have a debate around one or two, contested aspects of the Constitution. And this would be an excellent way for students to engage with Constitution values. So just to, I thought I would just kind of say that for starters. Okay. So what does Republic Day mean, and how do we use it to revive our commitment to the Constitution? And on this aspect, I would like to speak and give a talk today. So on 26 January 1950, India became a republic and an independent democratic country when our constitution was adopted. While the drafting of the constitution was completed, on one of the last days of the sittings of the committee, of the drafting committee, Dr. Ambedkar, who was the chairman of the drafting committee, said these words, and I would like to just quote from what he said. He said, "What does social democracy mean? It means a way of life which recognizes liberty, equality, and fraternity as the principles of life. These principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity, separate items in a trinity. They form a trinity in the sense that to divorce one from the other would be to defeat the very purpose of democracy." He went on to say that there was a complete absence of equality in Indian society at that time. And then he goes on to say, and again I quote, that on the 26th of January 1950, we are going to enter into a life of contradictions. In politics, we will have equality, and in social and economic life, we will have inequality. He then goes on to say that how can people divided into several thousands of castes be a nation? The sooner we realize that we are not as yet a nation in the social and psychological sense of the world, the better for us. For then only we shall realize the necessity of becoming a nation and seriously think of ways and means to realizing the goal. The realization of this goal is going to be very different, far more difficult than it has been in the United States. The United States has no caste problem. In India, there are castes. Castes are anti-national. In the first place, because they bring about separation in social life. They are anti-national also because they generate jealousy and antipathy. But we must overcome all these difficulties if we wish to become a nation in reality. For fraternity can be a fact only when there is a nation. Without fraternity, equality and liberty will be no deeper than coats of paint. These were his words just before the Constitution was adopted. Now, one of the three pillars of liberty, equality, and fraternity, which Dr. Ambedkar emphasized as being the bedrock of our constitutional values, one of them, and my focus for today's talk, is going to be on equality. Of course, these pillars are all interrelated and cannot be separated, but still I will be talking about equality. And I'll be focusing on equality through the lens of untouchability. Now, in guaranteeing equality and how this evolved into the making of the Constitution and how it is relevant even today to all of us. Now, in guaranteeing equality, the Constitution not only declared equal treatment to all before the law and prohibited discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth, but it also put in place several measures to remove existing discriminatory practices that were prevailing in society at that time because of many reasons, historical, economical, and social factors. And so our right to equality, or our equality code under the Constitution, though we commonly think that it is just Article 14 or maybe 15, it actually extends from Article 14 to 18. Apart from some very early constitutional scholars, actually, I think there has not been much emphasis on Article 17 as having a proper place on the right to equality. And Article 17 is the article which prohibits untouchability. And I would like to, in this talk, really expand on this notion as to how it was, in fact, included to remove discrimination on the basis of religion, caste, sex, and any other grounds. And I'd like to kind of focus on that today. So how did it start? And what were some of the pre-constitutional demands for removal of untouchability during the Constituent Assembly debates? Now, the earliest demands for removal of untouchability was by Ambedkar in the 1930 Roundtable Conference. In 1930, when the Roundtable Conference was held, a memorandum was submitted by Dr. Ambedkar where he proposed several fundamental rights. Now, most of these fundamental rights were for the protection of the depressed classes, or the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes as they are now known. And one of them was for the abolition of untouchability, which was elaborated as creating an equality based on citizenship. Along with the demand for abolition of untouchability, he also proposed a fundamental right for treating all persons as equal before the law and for the removal of discrimination. And what he proposed as a fundamental right was that all subjects of the state in India are treated as equal before the law and possess equal civic rights. Any existing enactment, regulation, order, custom, or law by which any penalty, disadvantage, or disability is imposed, or any discrimination is made on account of untouchability shall cease to have any effect in India. That was the kind of fundamental right that he had proposed. Then in 1931, there was an annual meeting of the Indian National Congress at Karachi, which proposed fundamental rights for Republic India. And this proposal included that there will be no disability attached to any citizen with regard to her caste, in regard to public employment, office, powers, or honors, or in any trade or calling, and equal rights of all citizens in all public roads, access to wells, schools, places of public resorts. Now, following this, in the late 1930s, after these proposals were made and these fundamental rights were demanded, in the late 1930s, there were a number of legislations, state legislations that were introduced, particularly in Madras, Bombay, some of these places, which allowed for temple entry and which prohibited the ban on temple entry on the basis of caste or religion. And these could perhaps be thought of as the first anti-discrimination laws in India, which prohibited discrimination in the use and access to temples, public facilities, and removed any exclusion which was imposed on people. For example, the Madras Removal of Civil Disabilities Act of 1938, which was perhaps one of the most comprehensive anti-discrimination legislations that were there, because it prohibited discrimination in access to public facilities, public accommodations like shops, hotels, restaurants, and made any discrimination, in fact, as criminal offenses. Now, while all this was going on, there were very intense debates on untouchability in the Constituent Assembly. And I'd like to focus on some of these because while they were primarily arising, untouchability was primarily arising on the basis of caste, it was not limited to caste. It extended to religion-based untouchability. It related to disability-based untouchability. And it had very, very wide ramifications. Now, in the Constituent Assembly, one of the members, S.C. Banerjee, he raised the issue. He's like, what does untouchability mean? So then he answered, it says, again, and I quote, he says, sometimes it means merely taking a glass of water, and sometimes it has been used in the sense of admission of Harijans into temples. It could mean intercaste dinner, sometimes intercaste marriage. Mahatma Gandhi, who's the main exponent of untouchability, has used it in various ways and on various occasions with different meanings. So when we are going to use the word untouchability, what is the real implication of the word? He asks that in the Constituent Assembly. And then he says, as Mr. Thakur has said, untouchability is merely a symptom. The root cause is caste distinction. And unless and until the root cause, that is caste distinction, is removed, untouchability in some form or the other is bound to exist. And when we're going to have an independent India, we should expect everyone to be enjoying equal social conditions. Then there was a great deal of debate as to what would constitute untouchability if we are to prohibit it in the Constitution. The initial draft that was suggested by Dr. Ambedkar said that there should be removal of all kinds of either privilege or discrimination arising due to birth, a person's status, family, religion, religious usage, or custom. Any discrimination or privilege based on these conditions should be removed. Rohini Kumar Chaudhary, another member of the Constituent Assembly, suggested that untouchability in the Constitution should be defined as any act committed in the exercise of discrimination on the ground of religion, caste, or lawful vocation of life, because discrimination was often carried out and practiced not only on the basis of caste, but also on the basis of religion and also on the basis of one's occupation or vocation, which were often tied in one way or the other to one's caste or religion. So therefore, interestingly, we can see that the scope or the practice of untouchability at the time of the drafting of the Constitution was very, very broad. It was linked not just to practices of discrimination on the basis of caste, but also religion and occupation. Jagjeevan Ram and K.M. Panikar, who were also members of the Constituent Assembly, said that there was a need to recognize untouchability among Christians and other religious communities as well. K.T. Shah, one of the other members, said that he asked the question whether practices of untouchability against women during menstruation, against people with leprosy, and against people placed under quarantine should also be brought under the ambit of untouchability. Isn't that quite remarkable that today we are in 2022 undergoing the pandemic, where we saw in the early period of the pandemic in 2020, where people were placed under strict quarantine, were actually treated like untouchables, right? And discriminated because the infection and its spread was so severe. And these were the very questions that were debated on the issue of untouchability during the drafting of our constitution, where the question was raised that would people with leprosy or people under quarantine would also be treated under the ambit of untouchability because discrimination was practiced against them. Finally, Article 17 was agreed to be drafted with an open-ended phrasing where untouchability was not defined. It was actually included in inverted commas. And so Article 17 reads, and I would urge you all after this talk to maybe have a look at it. Untouchability, Article 17 says abolition of untouchability. Untouchability is abolished and its practice in any form is forbidden. The enforcement of any disability arising out of untouchability shall be an offense punishable in accordance with the law. So untouchability was specifically left undefined and in inverted commas and left open-ended so as to bring within its fold all practices of discrimination and exclusion, and not limited just to caste-based practices, though that was one of the core reasons of bringing it into the Constitution. The idea was that it should address the removal of all forms of discrimination practiced on the basis of untouchability, and it addressed social stigma, inferiority, and degradation that results from such practices against certain groups. And therefore, really, I would say that by the inclusion of Article 17, the freedom from discriminatory practices that come out of untouchability was actually made a fundamental right in our Constitution. The significance of Article 17 is also because it is one of the few fundamental rights, like Article 15(2), that addresses practices of discrimination by private persons. The reason this is significant is because usually fundamental rights are thought of as rights against the state. But what Article 17 does by abolishing untouchability is that it prohibits discriminatory practices even by private persons. And that is not something that the Constitution permits. So Mark Galanter, a well-known scholar, actually argued that untouchability would also include discriminatory treatment associated with a person's membership of any group, even if the treatment did not involve avoidance of touching, but it could be restrictions on, say, dress or marriage ceremonies or social interaction. Now, there have been a whole range of cases around the issue of Article 17, both that have gone to our high courts and to the Supreme Court. And there have been cases around temple entry, around separate residential colonies, access to public goods and services, segregation in education, etc. And I won't go into all of them, but most of these cases look at Article 17 as a very important facet of equality and which guarantees dignity and social justice. Now, I would like to perhaps compare it, to some extent with with the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Now, what is the U.S. Constitution's 13th Amendment? The 13th Amendment was the amendment which abolished slavery in the U.S. Constitution. And there have been, this would be similar, that where slavery was abolished, in similar ways, untouchability was abolished in India. Now, early cases, I just want to use maybe one comparison, one comparative case between the US and some of the Indian practices. And there were a lot of cases that went to court under Article 17, where certain groups refused access to public goods and services. So there are many cases which went to different high courts where certain services like barber services or other public services were refused to people on the basis of their caste. And the court held that that would amount to a violation of Article 17, and such discrimination was prohibited. Now, one such case that went up to the US Supreme Court, where access to public services was segregated on the basis of race, was the case of Plessy versus Ferguson. This was a challenge to a law which required people of different races to sit in different railway carriages in the US. And what the court, in a, surprisingly, the US Supreme Court upheld it, but there was a dissenting judgment. I mean, it's interesting that in all our Indian court judgments, such practices have actually not been upheld and have been held to be discriminatory. In the US Supreme Court, while it was upheld, in one of the dissenting judgments, Justice Harlan said that such segregation in public services was unequal. And the reason I'd like to kind of read from what, or quote from what he says, is that arbitrary separation of citizens on the basis of race while they are on a public highway is a badge of servitude, wholly consistent with civil freedom and equality before law established by the Constitution, and it cannot be justified on any legal grounds. These were exactly some of the reasonings or grounds that kind of connect the abolition of untouchability and access to public services, and basically access to all civic rights and all civil rights. A recent case of our Supreme Court has been the Sabrimala case recently, where Article 17 was used as a ground for equality. In this case, the challenge was on the prohibition of women between the ages of 10 to 50 from entering the Sabrimala temple. Similar challenges have been made for entry to other religious places of worship as well. And in the Sabrimala case, Justice Chandrachud held that the exclusion of women on the basis of their menstruating age actually amounted to untouchability under Article 17. Especially if you look at Article 17 and its background of discrimination and social exclusion. He went on to hold, and I quote, that Article 17 is the constitutional promise of equality and justice to those who have remained at the lowest rung of a traditional belief system founded in inequality. Article 17 is enforceable against everyone, the state, groups, individuals, legal persons, entities, and organized religion, and embodies an enforceable constitutional mandate. It has been placed on a constitutional pedestal of enforceable fundamental rights. First, untouchability is a violation of the basic rights of socially backward individuals and their dignity. And second, the framers believe that the abolition of untouchability is a constitutional imperative to establish an equal social order. So there has been a clear link of Article 17 with equality. Now, while the Sabrimala case, why it is important is that it expanded the interpretation of untouchability, not just on the basis of caste, but also on expanding it to women, where women were faced with exclusionary practices, and the court held that this would amount to inequality. Forms and practices of discrimination which arise out of untouchability and notions of purity and pollution, I would actually say, are still very much present today in many contexts in our country. I mean, we would think quite often that, untouchability is long gone, right? We are now in the 21st century. There is no untouchability that used to happen. Especially in urban settings, it is not there. Untouchability is only on the basis of which groups may be experiencing, but it is not otherwise prevalent. But I would actually argue that that is not the case. Practices of discrimination and untouchability are still very much prevalent. They extend to not just temple entry, is what used to be would, but It extends to punishment for intercaste marriage, which we are seeing, intercommunity marriage, interfaith marriages, social and economic boycott, and it is also present in the ground of religion, gender, and disability-based discrimination. So today, I mean, the what I wanted to kind of actually raise as an issue around Republic Day is that how do we commemorate Republic Day by talking about perhaps equality and Article 17? And my message, or really my idea or suggestion would be that we should try and see how we can take steps to protect, preserve, and defend the Constitution in our own ways. And how do we become Constitution defenders? And what are some of the small steps that we can take to bring about equality and by removing untouchability? And in our present, in our daily lives, the first thing we can do is to really see where untouchability is present. It's far more indirect and non-obvious. It is present when people, communities, and groups don't dine together and eat separately. It is present when family members oppose marriage on the ground of faith, religion, caste, and community. We see that every day in our immediate or extended families, right? It is present when we see people using different utensils for serving people. It is present when we see people who don't socialize together, where people do not rent out houses to certain people based on their background, where people do not interact or do business with other groups. So it's present in all these cases. It's right in front of our eyes if we are only more aware to these kind of indirect practices of untouchability. And these are really practices of inequality. So let us be a little more aware of this, and let's become Constitution defenders and take our own small steps in our way in removing inequality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jayna ma'am. I think those are very crucial insights with regards to the Constitution. As a law student myself, I know the importance of what you have just said, how untouchability is rampant in front of us each day, every day. I also like to appreciate the amazing work done by the Center for Law and Policy Research across transgender rights and disability rights and governance reform and across very verticals. I think they're doing an amazing job. I also recall a brief association with the CLPR. Actually, I participated in the CLPR Conquest quiz back in 2019. It's the annual quiz. I finished in the top 8 in the North Zonal rounds. So I just had for mine. Thank you so much, Jayna ma'am. I'd like to now move forward and invite Dr. Sadaf Farid ma'am, President, University Debate and Literary Club, for the concluding remarks.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So, as we are celebrating the 73rd Republic Day, I wish we all preserve, protect, and uphold the sanctity of our Constitution and fulfill our duties towards our nation. I, Sadaf Farid, on behalf of the University Debating and Literary Club, thank Ms. Jayna Kothari for finding time to enlighten us with her views. We are grateful to her for laying out an academic feast before us and informing us about various important details related to our Indian Constitution. We are also thankful to Professor Sherani, Coordinator, Cultural Education Center, for motivating us to organize this lecture on the topic of most contemporary relevance. Thanks are also due to Mohammad Sabi Ahmad, Secretary, University Debating and Literary Club, for various organizational efforts. Above all, we express our thanks to all those who participated in this significant event. Thank you.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Thank you again, Jayna Kothari ma'am, for being with us today. We look forward to more events and more debates, as you said, on the Constitution, as we see. Thank you, everyone, for joining. That would be all. Very public.
Thank you.
Thank you.